Oh, no! Once more into the shitter. Inescapable. It wouldn't give me the champion fight last night. I was sitting in queue for over 50 minutes, it wouldn't give me it. That was the only 2 lobbies went past. I know because HKS got in them. Yesterday was horrible. Looks like today's gonna be exactly the same. I don't know what that was all about. Dude, it's a cat. Ah, she has purple armor. Ah, it's already Jover. I thought I had picked up the weapon the first time, but nothing happened, and then I lag spiked, and that disoriented me, and at that point I just kind of just accepted the game was already over. The second I get that, those lag spikes, by the way, they have nothing to do with the recording at all. I've tested a lot. On to the next lobby. Hopefully not a champion fight, but seeing as I kind of ratted in that one, I won't be shocked if it thought I had exemplary performance. I'll show you what my record looks like right now. It's pretty bad. Oh, actually the record might have been muddied a little bit by the quick matches that we played. Yeah, we played some quick matches. Let's see here. So some quick matches. So there was some games late at night. They were terrible. Middle of the day. And they were terrible. This quick match, this was a bot. I died to a bot in this one. Bot just locked me up and murdered me. This one here, I actually did pretty good in this one, but I got jumped by a dude. I went and killed a Kylan. I had a huge gear advantage on the Kylan, but because Kylan's ult is basically inescapable, he was able to do quite a bit of damage, and I just couldn't get away from him, so I killed him, but I had like no health left. And then some dude with like fucking... It wasn't Chinese characters, it wasn't Korean, it was some other, I think it might be Vietnamese, just appeared and murdered me. Otherwise, I actually possibly would have won that one, because I was in a good spot otherwise. That lobby was more my skill level. I'm pretty sure I could have beat that guy if I didn't have 1 HP. This one here, the reason why ooh, 69, nice. The reason why I have this is because I just shot a Volda that was being attacked by another Tessa, and I accomplished nothing in any of those games. Look at this, 5 back-to-back champion fights, and they were all terrible. I didn't do anything. I think in this one here, I might have killed... There was one Lanny that just kept killing me in every single fucking game. Over and over and over and over and over. And finally, she trolled hard enough that I could kill her. She just revived and just killed me right after. I had like gold armor and everything, and she had gray shit. It didn't fucking matter. So then we did some quick matches, and the only time we ran into players was this one here. And they were actually probably day 1 newbies. Like they were not Smurfs, they were actual newbies. And we had Soku with us, and it was like HKS was playing Lanny for some reason, and Soku was on Kylan and I was on Viper. So they got to experience some cancer very early into their matches. XD, Fraser. Champion fight honestly ruined solos in this game. Like, it ruined the game. With duos and trios, it doesn't really make as much of a difference. Most of the players were bots anyways. And it doesn't affect the map is not really that much different. But in solos, it's basically just a Mortal War with less players. And it's not fun at all. Like, maybe if you're like at the peak level, the lobbies may be a little bit faster for you. But was that a fucking Kurumi? Bye, I guess. Yeah, eat that blue. No, I want up. Armor? Ah, dude, armor. Sweet. Well, I'm not gonna pretend I can. Oh, that's like number one dudes. Isn't that dude like a number one on one of the things? Cool. Let's salty him and get this game over with. Move on to the next one. Now I'll grab this time. Like, the thing about most of these people is they're running at like 20, 30 ping. They have like 300, 400 FPS because they're running that X3D processor. Like, there is just no point in even trying to play through the game with them in it. Like, the skill difference alone is bad enough, but they have a massive, massive advantage in terms of their hardware and in terms of the geological lottery that they just won without any intervention on their behalf. I've played some pretty fucked games in my time. I played Halo PC. Halo PC is probably the worst game I've ever played up until this point for netcode performance. World of Warcraft is a very close second. And that's because in Halo PC, on the best connections imaginable, just because of how bad the netcode was, you had to lead by 3, 4, 5 player spaces ahead. And vehicle physics, they tried to sync that over the netcode. That didn't work out. And it was something you could adapt to, though, right? Like, you ended up with a lot of like this weaving and pistol dueling and weaving back and forth to try to break the prediction. Because you were never actually aiming at the player. You were aiming at where they were going to be. Because the netcode was just that terrible. And this game is a lot like that because Halo PC was, a very simple shooter. But the netcode basically dictated how you played it. And this game is very similar because when you're looking at pings as high as mine, people can do things to you that you just can't get out of. In some cases, you can do things to them they can't get out of. Like, when I'm doing customs with Mucky, he's got like around 50 ping. I cannot see him doing half charges. Like, I will not see the blue focus out of anything. So there will be so many cases where he's staggered and then I'm hitting him, but he's actually in a half focus. And it just, you suddenly no longer staggering him. So you just have to know precisely by heart every single soft and hard combo, which I don't have enough thousands of hours in this game to know that. I'm starting to know some of them. But it's like I'm a long ways off. So when I'm going up against these guys, let's see, let me find this dude. Yeah, number one. It was the server number one. I knew I recognized his name. 743 login days. When you're up against someone who has 743 login days, and this may not even be their only account because so many of these people are fucking smurfs, and dude's got 6,000 ranked matches, like, okay, let's just pretend there's no matchmaking because there isn't. Like, guarantee you if this guy streams, you look at his stream, you're gonna see his ping is maximum like 40, 50. And I already know just from fighting Monkey that you know, that's a tremendous advantage. It's a tremendous advantage because in the rare times where you're not getting rubber banded, you cannot do reaction parries most of the time. Another man's rudder. What in? Oh, turn! Ah, no. Oh, God, no. God damn it, Naraka, you son of a bitch.
Oh, no.
It's DC'd me or something here. I'm just gonna restart the game because it's gonna sit on connecting forever. It's done this before. Fucking Labyrinth was telling me about that yesterday.
Crash.
It wasn't even like my internet didn't even have a hiccup that time. It would event and everything is working fine. It was just the game. It's done that to me a few times now. And the thing is that one that has a hiccup like that, the game just crashes. Like you see reconnecting and then the whole thing just locks up. Ranked solos is a purgatory. You don't learn anything. You don't improve. But it's the only way you can try to play the game. It's a living hell. I'm going well. Okay. Alright, no. Okay. Okay. Transformers are fun and exciting to play against.
Nice game.
I'm out of there. Or not. Alright, I'm probably just dead then.
I'm reviving. Somewhere along the lines, you got to ask, how the fuck do I get anywhere in this goddamn game? But that's the question, isn't it? It's not very obvious where to go, how to get there, or how to start making that climb. I've played Naraka for an entire year, and I still haven't the faintest idea how to start learning this game. I would encounter the alleged number 1 Azura player who is immortal once again in the future, and this time I would defeat him twice in a row. Earlier, I also effortlessly destroyed the number 3 Azura player. If I show you only these clips, you might be inclined to think I have figured out, somehow, how to play this game. But you'd be wrong. Like every single other person who ever makes compilation videos or edits game recordings of any kind, the final product betrays the effort that went into making it. This final fight occurred at the end of an entire day of gaming, almost all of which looked a lot like this. How did I beat these players when I am fucking terrible? Either they were trolling, which seems very unlikely, or they are so ingrained into expecting certain responses from high-level players, my utter brashness and brainlessness caught them by surprise. Either way, it's not likely something I could replicate reliably if my previous encounters with the first was anything to go by. In much the same way, I took a round off of Xylenced. Most of my encounters with him end hilariously one-sidedly. As it should. He's played the game before, and I haven't. I have less than 1/3 the playtime of most of these players. The problem is that the playtime I do have hasn't really manifested in much improvement. The vast majority of times I die in Naraka, I don't know why or how I lost. Every now and then, I get cucked by terrain. My game decides to start freezing for seconds at a time, or I get ping-checked by people who won the geographic lottery and don't live in a shithole. The vast majority of the time, however, I am losing almost the exact same way every time, and I don't get what that way is exactly. I know it has something to do with neutrals, but a year into the game, I still haven't penetrated the surface of what constitutes as correct actions or decision-making in neutrals. I know the bad habits I have accrued from my previous years in competitive gaming, particularly button mashing, are holding me back. But this isn't the only reason I have a win rate of less than 2% and a KD of 0.77. The first step is acknowledging you need to improve. But how do you improve? Spamming games is one way, but this doesn't necessarily teach you anything, especially in Naraka. This is where my comparisons to Brood War really stand out. It's fairly easy to review Brood War FP VODs and replays and understand where your trouble spots are and what needs improvement. The same could be said for Naraka, but you only get your first-person view, and that isn't as useful. Actually, applying what you observe is excessively difficult, and both games have enough technical nuances they might not be able to spot many issues without knowing them ahead of time. It doesn't help that, especially in the North American player base, there is a lot of gatekeeping between the handful of players who play this game. They stand to benefit in their little circle of less than 50 individuals by withholding information from new players. It allows them to power trip on people and continue to help prevent the game from growing. And this simply wasn't the case in Brood War, even though there was a large gap between the Korean player base. Unfortunately, even when some people within Naraka's community attempt to create some kind of grounding for new players to get into it, it isn't very good. Watching the NBPL really isn't that great. The English commentators, even though Dunkin' Donuts is a top-end EU player, isn't really informative enough to really open up the game to new players, and the matches travel in such a way that technical commentary is difficult to begin with. The English casters glaze over most onboarding commentary that would be possible during downtime in the games, I've noticed. There's dead time and missed opportunity everywhere. Oftentimes, the casts are as impenetrable as the games, bare bones as they are, dedicated to people who are already at that skill level. It makes me appreciate all the more the translated Korean casts we got the rare time in Brood War. They often had extremely useful information peppered throughout them, and I highly doubt any game caster to come out after the time of Brood War and Kim Carrier, for example, has even come close. Most people in Naraka's English-speaking world prefer to gatekeep if they can, and those that don't have generally quit playing a long time ago. However, unlike Brood War, training in Naraka really isn't as simple as having a framework to build off of. Brood War, so to say, has a more stable foundation and reproducible game environment. Naraka in the West is beholden to so many complications and problems from its horrendous engine and server performance that you simply can't coach one person the same way you might another, even if their playstyles and problems are very similar. That's of course if you can afford the extreme cost of hiring an end user to coach you. If you can't do that, you have to hope your friends can help you. If you have no friends, you're just fucked. Spamming games won't help you very much, but it's still necessary in the end. Mucky, who first got me into Naraka, has tried to help me not be terrible. But it's a tough job.
Look, I finally got a real lobby, and it looks like a C. Oh my god, it's clever. We gotta find him. Where the fuck is he? The fuck is clever? I gotta find him. It's so jumpy! The last game was terrible too. It's just stutter, stutter, stall, stutter. What the hell is this tree doing? God, it's unplayable. It's horrible. The last game, when any of the last players enter my screen, it's just freezing constantly. This isn't right. We have clever in the lobby. Like, come on. Growth in Naraka is extremely hard to measure. I don't feel any better in my gameplay than I was 9 months ago. I still lose just as often to Mucky, and my solos, duos, and trios games are just as terrible. But there has been some improvement, and this mostly shows in the slow formation of muscle memory. I get more parries and I avoid being parried as often, sometimes. But to even get into the observations of self-improvement is a vast subject. That is why I decided to make this video. Early into August, I ran into a player called Gen Baller. I've run into him before in Quick Match, but that was some time ago. Quick Match is all bots all the time, so when 2 players show up, it is often a de facto custom room with bots. Only most other players will die to bots before I ever see them. Mr. Baller has over 9k achievement score and 2 years on his account. Last time I ran into him, it was a Zymir I narrowly lost thanks to being greedy. This time our matches would be fairly extensive as we constantly re-queued at the same time. The games almost became a wordless training session for me. Mr. Baller, despite having over double my time in this game, was somewhat close to my skill level still, an extreme rarity. If I had to guess, he wasn't quite at Mucky's level either, somewhere in between. He would do the things Mucky would do, but he hadn't trained himself to my weak neutrals, and I could still catch him off guard. I didn't learn much from our games, other than a Fansel Jade producing no sound when used, which really fucked with me. He did some things I hadn't seen other people do before, and it was something of an exam of everything I tried to learn since I last played against him. I only managed to put him on the defensive a few times, and I killed him flat out fewer yet. But I came out of the experience feeling like I had indeed improved since we last met a couple months ago. How exactly? Naraka Bladepoint is built of countless tiny mechanical facets, and you can't possibly fill your head with explicit intentional actuation of all of them. You need to build muscle memory that instinctively acts and reacts to these facets. 11 months into Naraka, and Maki informs me that one of the reasons I probably have been screwing my wave dashing is because I need to use the side movement keys when the camera is parallel to the walls, else you never attach them, unlike trees, whom aggressively abduct you like Slendermen and require constant policing with attack movements and navigation to avoid. This revelation means I need to relearn a ton of movement and muscle memory, but it's slowly starting to appear in my play. Elsewhere, I learn, or am possibly reminded, that swapping to unarmed can give you a longer wave dash for move locomotion. Of course, there's also the fact you need to remember to attack to kill the automatic mantling on windows and pulls that troll me constantly. I'm not sure which moveset is necessary for a flying knives locomotion. Is it 1-2 horizontals out of dash? Is it just 1? I still see people using vertical half charges, and it doesn't seem to be very effective. Naraka is like a many-layered onion, and you only really start to taste the fruit once you get past a few of the layers. It's unbelievably clunky, and yet the interactions promote a psychological experience that touches on that Brood War did. You only really get to have a small picture of what that interaction and its facets might look like once you actually start interacting with layers some levels below the surface, and getting to the point you can do this is no trivial matter. Part of this problem is that there are virtually no players in the entire Western player base for Naraka that are intermediate or just below intermediate skill. You have beginners, and you have gods. Mr. Baller did things I've never seen before in my 11 months of play, and easily outperformed me in most of our fights, and he's the closest thing to an intermediate player I've ever seen. Only a few months into Heroes of the Storm, and I was already easily in the top 10%. I could play Naraka for another 2 years, and I doubt much will change at my current pace. Hit collision is fucking whack in this game. Some weapons like the dual blades appear to activate collision completely unrelated to weapon position on certain blue attacks, making them impossible to reaction parry on ADMS. This gets to another conflict. Nexus told me he always react parries. Daledeer told me he doesn't like react parrying. He doesn't like parrying at all because it's a coin flip. Other people have told me to never try to react parry at all. When I asked Casper what was the most pivotal thing about reaching his current skill level, he said knowing your opponent's jades, ping and FPS, and of course the matchup. He never mentioned anything about neutrals, but seemed to focus on information gathering. Currently, I'm at the point where I can tell that any given C player is super laggy, and the game mechanics are entirely broken between us. But beyond this, it's hard to say for certain.
I'm never going to be genuinely good at Naraka. I'm too old, too heavily burdened by real life, and I can't commit the amount of practice time other people can in the game because queues are only active for a short time during the day, and that time conflicts with my terrible sleep, exhaustion, and other commitments. I have no ambitions of becoming professionally competent. That would require me to be Chinese anyways. I would, at least, like to become comparatively as good as I was in, say, Heroes of the Storm or similar ventures. I think the combat system, as clunky as it is, can be entertaining at a high level, but I won't know until I start to breach that high level. There's a lot of frustrations in Naraka. The abhorrent hero balance, the abhorrent ping and frame rate performance, and a learning curve that, for the most part, only exists because of bugs and technical problems that became the competitive framework and gentrified what would be most favorably construed as a highly destructive and unreasonable game design approach. But it can be entertaining too. The problem is, for every game that is funny or exciting, there's 30 to 40 games that are just me dying without any rhyme or reason, or visible path to changing the outcome. If the outcome could be changed at all. Champion Fight encourages me to hot drop and salty revive immediately, because there's absolutely no point in doing anything else. I'm placed into a tiny arena with a server top players, all of which who have 3 or more years on their account, and up to 10 times my ranked games, if I get lobbies at all. Even during peak hours, I often wait 40 to 50 minutes for a 3 to 4 minute game. I try to practice mechanics in training, but it only leads to my frustration. I don't have any clue what I should be focusing on, what my goals should be, or what I should be looking for as flaws in my play. In my recent bout with Dale Deer, he said a few things. He both said I might be too aggressive, and I also respect my opponent too much. Since I've struggled so much with Tarka, both Mucky and Dale Deer have put some time into trying to teach me how to fight Tarka. All I've really learned from the experience thus far is that he can't be fought, at least if the opponent is any good with him. Tarka's stamina management has a fairly high skill ceiling to it, so not just anyone can infinite you out of the gate. However, Tarka's massive buff he recently received gave him a ton of unnecessary extra tools on top of his already overloaded kit. The conversations also brought out a subject that has been brought to my attention before. The CN players, who regularly humiliate the global ones anytime they are brought together in a tournament, have a very different approach to neutrals and overall strategy. They primarily focus on tickling down their opponent and playing hyper-defensively, refusing to commit unless they can guarantee a kill. Their mobility and survivability are a lot higher in general, of course. You can't just turn around and try to apply this mindset at your current skill level. But the evolution of their playstyles comes from a mindset polarity. It appears that CN players have trained out, or otherwise never had, the obsession that Westerners have with making plays. You'll see it sometimes, but it's often very calculated. Hypernova was watching an EU scrim between top players and made a comment towards the end of a match that a decision one of the players made was enough for him to lose interest in the entire event. The Spirit line was active, and a Lanny was on it. Another Lanny chose to contest him. A Liam was also active elsewhere, but kept his distance for the most part. Hypernova felt that the Lannies should team up and focus out the Liam, and that contesting the Spirit line, which gives gold armor, full rage and health restore, a lifesteal buff, and a separate gold item, was the wrong idea. I asked him why. He gave me an extensive answer, but none of his points felt really convincing to me. His long-winded reply was effectively referring to the so-called family meta in CN, where the same character players will team up against other characters. This makes sense when singling out characters with temporary health like Volda because they're so strong in the final circles, but it was the first time I heard of it being a thing for all characters in general. I asked if it was simply because mirror matches were preferable, but I was told this wasn't the case. Really, the reply didn't convince me whatsoever that one Lanny contesting another for the Spirit line was the wrong choice at all, other than opening the risk of being third-partied. But it did tell me that there is underlying mindsets behind target selection and objective priority that probably won't make sense in most applications I could place them upon. The family meta doesn't exist outside of tournaments and scrims in the West, if it's employed at all. An EU player, Zay, got disqualified from a scrim for following it, because it was perceived as teaming, even though every single NBPL match is teaming and personified. You won't see this behavior in any match you queue up for. I've never once personally witnessed players willingly give up objectives like the Spirit line unless they are sure they'll lose the fight. In a recent match, one of the only ones I have ever won since I first hit Platinum, I killed 4 players, 2 of whom were extremely high level, whom were either directly contesting the line or hanging out trying to third-party it. Any one of them could have chosen to leave, but they didn't. They contested it down to the very end. A lot of times the line is given to me for free because other people will be fighting elsewhere at the time, especially in champion fight. But if someone's there, they will contest it every single time. Most people rush to it the second the objective starts to count down. I'm an opportunist. In a champion fight, I don't give a shit whatsoever. But in a match, I feel a chance to win. I will do anything I can to win. This was what Hypernova said to do in one of his videos, after all. Provided I remember. Ballistas, rolling pins, flamethrowers, third-partying, pinning people with the chariot, or rippers, resetting every J in the game, even pulling bots over to players to use them to double-team. I do it all the time, without the slightest hesitation. The problem, of course, is remembering to do any of these things, all these things. I often set up Jades or ranged weapons, and forget to use them at all. Sometimes even in videos I have publicated, you'll see me miss certain Jades on my screen. Strong ones like Ripple Step or Sap, sitting on the loot menu I could have made use of. I just won't see them for some reason. It's a reflection of the multitasking and tunnel vision issues I've struggled the most with in games like Brood War, and still plagues me to present day. That tunnel visioning is also likely causing me some problem in my neutrals. I technically have game knowledge, and I've beaten high-end players like Immortal, but I have no consistency. Forget things exist or can happen, forget players can do certain things or characters can do certain things, and have a very spotty window of reference for any given subject. Naraka's innumerable mechanical facets need to become subconscious. They need to be something you can work into muscle memory, and for one as smooth-brained and autistic as myself, that makes the challenge of competency even more unapproachable. Another thing Daldir told me is he uses audio cues a lot. I'm the same way in other games, but I realized I really wasn't doing this very much with Naraka. Most of the sounds are pretty indistinguishable for me. I imagine there's some amount of configuration he has, probably turning down the speech if not turning it off entirely, along with ambient sounds. I have noticed that in some streams, but there's not that many audio cues in the game to begin with, other than blue focus and abilities. It's something I should probably ask him about next time we meet up. As we enter September, I am now starting on my second year of playing this game, but I have no clue what I should be doing now. As far as solos goes, Champion Fight has ruined what little enjoyment I ever got out of the experience, and I only see Champion Fight lobbies now. I shouldn't be in these lobbies, but here we are, and that's not going to change. I find no enjoyment out of being farmed for points by faceless nobodies, and routing for 10 minutes just to die enemies later on is even less productive. Quick Match is completely dead. We haven't played much team games this season, partially due to scheduling, and partially because that experience has also been very poor. As the game leans more and more into the existing Transformer meta, it becomes less and less interactive, and individual fights are less and less interesting. It doesn't help most of the players in duos and trios are either the same people in solos, or people who are even better. We win significantly less fights in trios than I do even in solos, and you've seen what most of my solos fights look like. Duos is basically Mucky carrying as hard as he can. I am, at best, an annoyance, and when the enemy team focuses on me, they throw the match. Mucky's neutrals are, in my experience, one of the stronger skill sets in the player base, even though he hasn't learned the extensive combos some of the more technical players have. It's enough to win games, especially in duos, and our duos record is abnormally high given how incompetent I am. It helps to run a very toxic comp for anything that isn't Transformers, usually Viper and Tessa, though I've also won games with Viper Syrah. Previously we ran Viper Justina, but since I can't use V1 very well, and chasing Mucky's ridiculous locomotion with V2 as other players flew around like ninjas was too difficult, it was very unreliable. Unfortunately, everyone who plays Naraka is effortlessly capable of dodging Tessa's ult.
Countless times, entire teams immediately iframe out of it, even in the middle of a huge clusterfuck. I've only ever once, and by complete chance, avoided a Tessa ult, and that was by using Tumultuous skill. In my experience, the handful of wind-up frames offered is nowhere near enough to react to. Perhaps it's an FPS difference, I don't know. I haven't the faintest clue how people learn to dodge Tessa, Volda, or Wu Chen ults. To me, it just seems entirely impossible. It likely always will be for me. It doesn't help that champion fights made duos matches entirely unwinnable. Champion Fight appears to be a coordinated effort by the developer to kill the game in the West. It offers no benefits whatsoever, queues are much longer, and new players are intentionally funneled individually into impossible lobbies. It's an excellent way to ensure no further traffic comes into the game, and that's about it. Yes, old lobbies were always challenging, but since you had a mix of people, you could sometimes run into the odd console player that was just as clueless as you are. Now they've either all quit or get sectioned into their own lobbies, which still contain a handful of top 10 players, instead of people more appropriate for their skill level. It's a system that plainly doesn't work in either respect. There was a day I had Clever in every single one of the half-dozen non-champion fights I had. The number 1 Trio's Immortal War player, who effortlessly killed me each and every single one of those games. It made me want to write off solos forever. Trios is a disaster. HKS has no interest in trying to train or learn tech like I have, and as a result, he is significantly behind even me. He's basically a free kill for the vast majority of otherwise low-end players, and he also often forgets to pop his ult in Kurumi when someone is dying, not to speak of the struggles with the jank as hell skill. I'm not even convinced our typical composition, Viper, Tessa, Kurumi, is even that good to begin with. We get destroyed by just about every single team fight we run into, even if it's people I can beat in solos. Trios is such an utter clusterfuck that most of the time I find I can't do anything at all. I can't stop people from dogpiling Mucky or HKS, and peeling feels like I'm losing. The CC offered by Silence and Stun isn't enough to kill and outplay most teams, the rare time we actually get them all to land. Again, it relies very heavily on trying to run interference and letting Mucky mow through them. Sometimes they kill him before I even catch up to the initial engagement to begin with. It's extremely rare for a Trio's gaming session to end on a positive note of any kind. There's clear and evident contrast between play styles and communication, long before we even talk about game knowledge and skill. I've never seen a team like this actually work out in my history of gaming, and I doubt it will work out here either. I just think the tolerance between Mucky and myself is a lot higher than that of HKS. This isn't necessarily a good thing either. I also think that coordination in this game and having a synergy between playstyles is actually extremely important, because things can happen so fast that communicating them isn't even necessarily going to work out anyways. We're going to spend over 1,000 hours playing something. You're going to be invested into self-improvement and becoming competent at that product. All activities in life are driven by competition and self-improvement. It's the survival mechanism of natural selection and motion. For those of us who failed at natural selection and only subsist through the satanic miracles of science and dumb luck are going to continue to be unable to interact with the mechanism of self-improvement. To even determine if I can break past certain mental blocks prohibiting me from doing basic things like button discipline after 20 years of struggling seems impossible. I can't find any information anywhere on this subject. I don't think playing the game for another 1,000 hours is going to help whatsoever with this particular problem. It certainly doesn't help that some actions like using healing items are prone to being extremely unresponsive due to hidden timers, which is flat out a bug. A bug the developer clearly doesn't give a shit about because it's been here for years. I think the issue has many facets in itself as well. It's not simply a bad habit developed over decades of bad games like League of Legends. It's also a result of my extremely high anxiety. It's like a continual self-replicating reinforcement of the need to act.
Input queuing is one of the most poorly managed mechanics in any game it shows up in, and Naraka is no exception. Naraka will hold a queue for literal seconds depending on the animation, especially with attacks. This leads to all kind of stupid shit I know is wrong but do anyways, like 1-2 uppercut when I really want a 1 uppercut or no uppercut at all. You'll see it constantly in nearly every video. I've somehow developed entirely new bad habits, and I have no idea why it keeps happening.
In a recent session, we tried a different team comp in trios, Iron Wang, Tumulch, and Karumi, of which I did upload a significant chunk of those sessions to YouTube. I have very little experience, much less skill with Tumulch, and in general it's expected we'll have problems. The games were terrible. Then I watched a stream of some of the top players, including Prosper, get utterly butchered in trios with a variety of comps as well. Many of their games didn't look much better than ours, despite clear mechanical differences. I didn't glean any hints on how to improve our situation, though I'm sure I could point out any individual mistake any person makes. Actually applying anything in any event is difficult. I felt like one of the players in Prosperous games was holding their ult way too long and would often die for the effort, and also had slow reaction times on their escape skills. In my games with Tumulch, I am not sure how to prioritize throwing fart clouds or trying to deal weapon damage. I try to peel, but we often just get outlasted anyways, if someone doesn't get bursted down instantly. Mucky told me that Tumulch probably just uses V1 and apes out on people, which I could always try, but I'm not sure the difference is going to really matter. Almost every Trios player in A is equivalent to Immortal in skill, so your chances of beating any of them individually as a person with only a year into the game are extremely low. It hardly feels worth the frustration. You want to get into the game, but there is no way to do so. Every time you try, you are immediately ejected from it. It's like a spring. The harder you try, the further back you are thrown. Trying to navigate Naraka and actually penetrate it so that you can actually meaningfully interact with the players is like boxing shadows with your dick stuck inside a water pump. And yet the water pump isn't sucking, it's pushing. You don't even get the satisfaction of having it pulled clean off. You just get nothing. Most Westerners, Americans especially, quit long before they get to this point. The white man prefers easy games he can master in 1 or 2 weeks, like Elden Ring or StarCraft 2. Loot boxes, gambling, and leveling up wows a consumer more than self-improvement. Those white boys I've found who've stuck with the game to any extent over this time are often quite bitter about it. Universally, people tell me they liked the combat, but hated the game. Hypernova regularly complains about the developer's complete lack of giving a shit for us pigskins, and he himself has been directly fucked over by their incompetence. No one I've ever talked to is surprised that the NA experience hasn't improved one bit since the game came out, and no one expects that to ever change. NA doesn't even run a moderation team, so bannable offenses run rampant, and reports funnel into a void. I've confirmed this myself. Champion Fight was implemented without even thinking for a second about player bases outside of China, and the quick match lobby system remains so broken that it refuses to even put people into a single lobby unless they queue at the exact same second. Frankly, it's a wonder this game ever gained any traction in the West to begin with. And yet, between the slapping and the cat emote spam, stealing wins from sweaty adolescents, and ping-checking people with my absurd Canadian latency, some amount of entertainment is yet to be found. I just wish I could close a gap between frustration and enlightenment. Find some way to figure out how to actually interact with the player base more than once every 30 to 40 games. I don't have the patience to spam unwinnable matches forever, and In reality, the only reason I've done so in the last while is because I have no motivation to do anything else, and my game project is dead. With my health rapidly deteriorating and my insomnia destroying my ability to work on my D&D games, I will more often than not consider getting on this stupid fucking internet over anything else. I'm willing to work to try to find that road to self-improvement, but I first need to find where that road is hidden. A month after most of the recordings in this video were taken, I happened by chance into a customs versus one of the players that helps Immortal train. Nebula is not quite as good as Immortal, at least in terms of combos, but he's still able to take rounds off him fairly regularly. I was able to kill him a handful of times, but most of the fights didn't really look any different than any of the other encounters I've shown in this video. I didn't fight Immortal himself, but I did get to watch them fight each other for over an hour and a half. Unfortunately, even this experience didn't really teach me a lot about the game. I asked Nebula where he thought I should improve. Nebula said that really depends on your FPS and ping, which I told him. Even in the Yang Customers Arena, I didn't really see any higher than 240 FPS, and my ping fluctuates between 70 and 85. He said that I need to play blue. I'm not entirely sure how to interpret this, but after watching him play against Immortal for a time, I think I have some idea what he means. Something I have increasingly noticed over my study of both my videos and fights between other players is that few people rarely try to go for parries. It's not simply a Dealdir viewpoint, it's clearly a mindset most players have evolved into. I've noticed a path where beginner players really don't try to parry or the parries are out of sync, and people I would consider more or less intermediate or towards my skill level do what I try to do. Parry through blues, which often involves you getting baited into hold checking, which always feels really bad. But it creates this circular, very cyclical and repetitive motion that I have been punished by from Mucky alone constantly, which is when you attempt to parry, you will be immediately punished, because the player is going to guess your parry time and immediately cancel into a white that starts a combo. In fact, the only real difference between someone like Mucky and someone like Immortal past their animation speed is the fact that Immortal has such stronger combos. This is also the main difference between Nebula and Immortal as well. Immortal's combos are much more punishing, so his individual hits have more success. Like Dealdir said when we first started, it only takes 1 or 2 hits to end a fight with a high-level Naraka. This is likely why I'm able to take rounds off of them as well, and it may expose a facet of the reason why so many people seem to struggle against the pull swords. Players like Nebula and Immortal enjoy near land speeds, and in this Yang arena, Immortal told me he has anywhere between 500 and 700 FPS. The game completely falls apart at this point. The spectator camera goes completely out of sync, and the movement between the players is entirely illogical. Many times with my fights against Nebula, who has ping slightly lower than Mucky's, despite phoning in from C, he moves impossibly fast, and there's little I can do to keep up. There was nothing I could do to get back my turn other than try to confuse my opponent with autism. This was, after all, one of the key components I walked away with after my second bout with Dealdir. The phrase, "put a little retard in your step." The pull sword and the greatsword are the ultimate retard weapons, although the greatsword has less tools available to it, and it can be abused very heavily by the longsword. The thing is, though, these weapons abuse weaknesses within neutrals in ways the other weapons don't necessarily do so, because the timing is so much slower and you can interpolate your timing in different ways that the other weapons really can't do. These players almost always exclusively fight with things like the hang sword, the katana, the long sword, and rarely things like the spear or the dual blades, depending on what they're doing. But most often you're going to see a lot of these people relying things like the longsword, because it's consistently fast, it seems to have the most reliable parry, and it allows the very long combo strings. When you play a game that relies very heavily on basically mechanics that involve psychology, you change the equation somewhat in ways that most people aren't familiar with, because the pull sword isn't nearly as flashy of a weapon as a longsword at a high level, but it does so much more damage just through winning the neutrals. Nebula's hint at playing blue is to effectively continue doing what I'm doing. The main thing is I need to somehow figure out a way to change the pacing with other weapons that are faster without getting caught in the chain of things that Nebula constantly catches me with during these fights. Even though these players are incomparably superior to me, I could pick out periods between their fights where someone would do something wrong. Incorrect inputs, incorrect decisions, or wasted opportunity. This is because they've optimized their inputs to the stage where these become quite obvious. One of the reasons why I have a hard time figuring out what I can do with a lot of fights is, even though I see that I've done things wrong, ultimately, since I do everything wrong, I can't really isolate any given thing and say I should do this here. Furthermore, I have no strategy for applying a way to get that muscle memory into shape. Whereas in their cases, since it's so nuanced, the learning curve is substantially higher, which means that in order to actually work out specific incorrect decisions, it's kind of a diminishing return in training. My problem is, though, I don't really have a way to train myself out of this. It basically amounts to button discipline and then having some way to target this stuff, but I don't actually know how to approach that. I don't know how to approach fixing things. In this case here, where he is shooting me, I'm not sure really how to approach because I know he's trying to bait me to get close to him, but I'm not really confident I can get behind the pole and just heal either. Every time I try to shoot him back, I will miss. So what the fuck do I do? There's also the problem that I'm not really good at dashing. Actually, it seems like when you reach past the intermediate point, one of the big deciding factors is using dash instead of parry. Not only that, but a lot of these players seem to have this ability to dash and get behind you. I've asked Mucky about this, but I've never really been able to do it the way he does it. Apparently, you can just hold dash and then hold again and you will end up behind someone. But I think you have to be a certain distance, and I'm not really accustomed to input sequences like that. It's not really something I know how to do. But this is one of the main ways that people get openings. They look for opportunities to force out a parry or something like that, and they will dash between them. When you reach higher level skill, they will actually just use the dash to iframe things like Tessa's F, including the explosion from the balls on Syrah's F, something that even Mucky has done to me just constantly, and it drives me insane. You would think for somebody who's played through all the Souls games and has rolled to infinity and beyond by playing Dexfag builds, that the whole dashing thing would be second nature to me by now. The problem with Naraka is that there's two different dashes, and the way they work is completely different from one another. The tap dodge is really the one I'm talking about the most. I'm ingrained to use the hold dodge because it allows you to do certain actions faster coming out of it, but it actually gives you less iframes than the tap dodge. The double tap dodge that Mucky sometimes uses to scoot away is something I have never been able to do. It always turns into a roll, and I don't know why. Actually, if you watch me play the fist blades, especially with Clownweaver, 90% of the time I try to tap dodge to chain a dash into Clownweaver, I will fuck it up, and I'm sure that has actually costed us games. Then there's the repair dodge. If you dodge, repair, and then dodge again to cancel it, you can double scoot very, very far, extending your iframes rather substantially. I've seen Immortal fuck this up several times where he probably ran out of stamina, but this is a skill everybody's going to be using. If you ever see anybody accidentally repairing in the middle of the fight, chances are that's what they screwed up. But if you don't screw it up, it allows you to make insane distance. It just costs a lot of stamina immediately. This kind of shit probably shouldn't be possible, but the developer refuses to remove it. So it's a skill set you have to learn to compete. What this means is I do have a route forward. It's just not really the kind of route you would really expect. I need to somehow learn how to use tap dodging. Even though for some reason I use dodging, it's just not tap dodging, and it's the only possible way you can actually try to fight Volda. If you don't know how to tap dodge on command within a few frames of warning, you can't win against Volda. It never will happen. So when you watch these two players who play a Volda mirror for an hour and the vast majority of ults get dodged, you feel a little impotent. There's other things too I haven't even begun to touch on. The slap meta, for example, is still in full force despite the developer nerfing it constantly. It is used obsessively by just about everybody at this level of play, because the slap is just so insanely strong. So of course you're going to use it to do things like avoid clashes, break through white attacks, and other nonsense. It's just a part of your general combat rotation. So if you're not accustomed to swapping in and out of unarmed and using the slap, well, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Once Immortal warmed up and apparently downed an ocean of coffee, the fight started to become a little bit more one-sided, where you would often win the matches with significant advantages. But Nebula would still take rounds off of him in spite of this fact. It just goes to show that, well, even at the high level, it still is very even in spite of some clear mechanical differences. Immortal had this ability to just kind of navigate his opponent into a pillar when he caught him in a longsword combo. This allowed him to conduct a near infinite TOD, which most of the time would even kill Volda, even if she still had some temporary health left. Actually, having temporary health was effectively the only way that Nebula would actually survive this combo. It happened over and over and over and over again. It was actually, as far as I was concerned, the most major skill difference between the two. One could perform this extremely reliable TOD, and the other didn't, or at least didn't try to. At the end of their games, another dude was invited to play against them. He was not anywhere near their skill level, but this is one of the players that fairly easily defeated me during one of my ranked videos. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's one of the videos I have on YouTube. I've seen him play before, so I kind of get an idea of where his skill level is at, but he lacks the ability to deal with these neutrals just like I do. The constant flipping back and forth, even though Immortal's not quite able to get him into that TOD right away, was something he just couldn't deal with. And then Immortal started abusing his performance and did this really crazy grapple chain that he's managed to extend quite far. And yeah, it's a little goofy. Just a little goofy. Of course, watching the spectator camera, even when it's less jumpy in the Celestra map because it kills our frame rate a little bit, is still not really getting anywhere near one-to-one with they're actually seeing on their screen. Their game actually appears to run a little bit slower just because of the amount of frames they have, which makes it easier to read what's going on, but it's still a lot of muscle memory. A lot of what they've learned, a lot of their general inputs are all ingrained into them that they just do naturally. There's not really a lot of thought going on behind whether they do X or Y, Z action. It's just, my opponent does this, so I'm going to do this because I think this is going to happen at most. Generally, however, there's kind of a turn-based order to it, with a lot of effective counters involved. When you turn terrain into the equation, however, things do become a little bit different, and most of the people spamming customs are doing it within flat terrain with a few pillars, either in this Celestra arena or within the Yang map, which doesn't reflect most of the survival matches. Remember, I managed to defeat Immortal twice in a row, and a part of that was probably owed due to the way the terrain, the chase, and everything else was played out. But in the customs against Nebula, who was struggling for many of these matches, it's hard to believe I would ever take a round off of any of these guys. So really the point is, there is some kind of gap just between the general approach, and that's what's preventing me from interacting with them most of the time. So I have to figure out what it is that prevents me from interacting with them. I think the most basic thing at this stage in time is the fact I go more for parries than I should, but there's a lot of timing involved with dashes, and you can just as easily catch people out of dashes as you can with parries. So I don't really know where to go from there, and especially when my ping is so much higher than everybody else's is, and those timings are different than what everybody else deals with. I suppose what Nebula was insinuating is that I should be holding blues more so than trying to do dashes and whites. That's the impression that I got from what he said. After all this, I unceremoniously inserted myself into a customs lobby I saw being streamed. It had several familiar faces in it. Neko-chan 420, who was a Tarka player we barely managed to defeat twice in a row in quick match trios some months prior, and I'm Near, who's probably killed me at least 50 times in solos effortlessly, and some Gen players I've also seen in group queues. The first round was hysterical with a free-for-all clusterfuck, but I did manage to get Neko-chan into a one-on-one a few times, where I got to feel out his skills a bit. It's still hard to believe there's players out there as strong as him and I'm Near playing on a fucking console, and it shows that you don't necessarily need 500 FPS to do well in most lobbies, though the controller and auto-aim certainly make some actions easier. That said, one of the players had 250 MS, and the rest were probably 50 or lower, so I accomplished basically nothing. In the next match, I faced off with I'm Near several times along with some others, and I managed to take rounds off of all of them, but only barely so. They were all good fights, and reminded me strongly of my encounter with Nebula, but paced a little slower. The two experiences, back to back, gave me some reflection on what the skill differences and playstyles were like, which to me came out to the high speed flipping back and forth and tap dodge timings. Nebula told me he's played a ton of customs, so it's surely a muscle memory thing. It reminded me of what Casper said in response to another viewer, in which he didn't like customs. Some people only play customs, but to me they don't reflect the real game, and much of what I do in customs I forget to do in survival mode, like use strange weapons. However, I'm starting to think that I need to forcibly insert myself into random customs lobbies like this when the opportunity should present itself, which is not very often given that the game is completely fucking dead. But it might be the only way I can try to expose myself to these skill levels without the 50, 20, 30, 50 multiple day waiting period where I can actually get queues. Whatever the case may be, it feels like I'm starting to kind of get a picture of how granularity and skill differences are defined, but I'm still a far cry from getting anywhere with that myself. I think I just need to pour in another 1,000 hours and come back to this subject after I've done so. One thing I can tell you for sure, though, is that finally being able to defeat I'm Near after so much trauma that he's put me through, as well as being able to defeat that Ether guy after being destroyed by him several times, that did feel good. And that's what it's all about, is finally overcoming that challenge. Oh my god. He knows too well when I'm gonna blue him, even if I hold it for a while.
ちゃうなんて。
我が百連の技を見せてやる。
私の足元にひれ伏しなさい。私たちの運もこれで切ればね。
Dude, I finally killed him. I don't know what happened to his ult. I think if I ult, when he ults, he can't capture me.